In the summer of 1942, the fate of an empire rested on a forgotten patch of desert. For 6 days, exhausted soldiers held a thin line against one of the greatest commanders in history, and won. Most have never heard their story. Yet, without them, the Second World War might have ended very differently. The desert is a place of silence. Here, sound carries in strange ways. The distant rumble of an engine can feel as close as a whisper. Heat distorts the horizon until the land itself seems to sway. The air is dry enough to split your lips in minutes, and every breath carries the taste of sand. In July 1942, this vast emptiness became the stage for a clash that would decide the future of North Africa. To the untrained eye, the railway stop at El Alamein was nothing more than a few scattered buildings and a strip of track. But to military planners, it was a bottleneck, the last defensible position before the open road to Cairo and the Suez Canal. To lose El Alamein was to lose Egypt. And to lose Egypt was to hand Germany and Italy the key to the Middle East, its oil, and the lifeline of Britain's empire. The man advancing toward this outpost was Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, a commander whose name was spoken with both fear and respect. To his enemies, he was the Desert Fox, a master of speed, deception, and battlefield improvisation. For 2 years, Rommel's Afrika Korps had been sweeping the Allies before them, from the sands of Libya to the borders of Egypt. His tactics were as fast as they were unpredictable. He would feint an attack on one flank, only to wheel his tanks around and smash into the other. Convoys were ambushed, supply depots destroyed, and Allied morale worn thin. Now he was poised for his greatest prize. With the Suez in his grasp, Britain's supply routes to India, Australia, and the Far East would be severed. The war could tilt irrevocably in the Axis' favor. Facing Rommel was a patchwork force of British, Australian, New Zealand, South African, Indian, and Free French units. They were not the strongest troops in the theater. Many were recovering from earlier defeats at Gazala and Tobruk. Their uniforms were sun-bleached and torn, their boots patched with strips of canvas. Private Thomas Grant of the 9th Australian Division wrote in his diary, "The sand is everywhere. In your ears, in your food, in your rifle. It's in the water. You drink. We fight it as much as we fight the Germans." Water was rationed to half a canteen per day. The men ate hard biscuits and tinned meat, swallowing them dry because there wasn't enough water to wash them down. The desert stripped away comfort until only necessity remained. At dawn on July 1st, 1942, the horizon to the west shimmered with dust, not from the wind, but from Rommel's advancing tanks. Minutes later, the first artillery shells screamed. Overhead, slamming into the Allied positions, the defenders ducked into shallow trenches, feeling the ground tremble beneath the bombardment. Sand erupted into the air with each impact, raining down in gritty clouds. Machine guns opened up, their metallic chatter echoing against the emptiness. The Germans moved with purpose. Tanks rolled forward in disciplined formations, infantry close. Behind, each push was met with stubborn resistance, but each hour the defenders were forced to give ground. The first 2 days blurred into a haze of smoke and sun. Positions shifted constantly. An Allied machine gun nest would fire until the barrel glowed, then fall silent as its crew was killed or forced to retreat. Men were moved like pieces on a chessboard, filling gaps in the line before the enemy could exploit them. By the 3rd day, Rommel's panzers had punched into the Allied defenses. A British battalion was nearly surrounded and only escaped by leaving behind its heavy guns. Another unit, out of ammunition, fought with bayonets in a desperate close-quarters battle. The desert showed no mercy. Wounded men lay in the sand for hours before stretcher-bearers could reach them under cover of darkness. Flies swarmed to open wounds. The heat of the day gave way to freezing nights, the cold cutting through thin uniforms. It was in these darkest hours that the defenders resorted to one of the oldest weapons in war: deception. Using captured German radios, Allied operators began transmitting false orders, instructions for enemy units to advance into mined areas, to redeploy away from key targets, or to halt for non-existent resupply convoys. The plan was audacious and dangerous. If discovered, it could have spurred an even fiercer assault. But it worked. German columns became disorganized, attacks mistimed, opportunities lost. Rommel's legendary sense of momentum faltered for the first time in months. By the fifth day, both armies were spent. The Afrika Korps was short on fuel and supplies. The Allies were exhausted and running low on ammunition. The battle teetered on the edge of collapse for both sides. Then, just after dawn on July 6th, a line of shapes appeared on the eastern horizon. British and Commonwealth reinforcements, tanks glinting in the morning light, trucks kicking up, long trails of dust. The relief was almost physical. Soldiers in the trenches shouted and waved, their voices hoarse from days of shouting over gunfire. With fresh armor and artillery, the Allies counterattacked, pushing the Germans back from the most critical points of the line. The First Battle of Alamein was not a crushing Allied victory. The lines did not dramatically shift, and Rommel remained a dangerous opponent. But his advance was stopped cold. His timetable was wrecked. The Suez was safe, for now. More importantly, the battle bought the Allies time. In those precious months that followed, they reorganized, reinforced, and prepared for the decisive Second Battle of Alamein, the clash that would finally drive the Axis out of North Africa. Today, the First Battle of El Alamein is often overshadowed by the Second. The memorials list its dates and the numbers of dead, but the details have faded in public memory. The desert has swallowed many traces of the fight, trenches filled with drifting sand, rusted shell casings buried beneath the surface. For the men who fought there, it was not about glory or fame. It was about holding the line because there was no other choice, about enduring the unendurable so that the enemy could not take one step more. Decades later, a veteran was asked if he thought the battle had really mattered. He paused for a long time before answering. Back then, we didn't know. We were just hanging on. But looking back, maybe hanging on was enough. Maybe it always is. In that lonely stretch of desert, against the odds, a handful of men changed the direction of a war. And though their names may be forgotten, their stand at El Alamein remains quiet, resolute, and enduring in the winds of history. History remembers the victories, but it is built on the stands that almost no one remembers. The dusty outposts, the nameless ridges, the thin lines of men who refused to yield. These moments, hidden in the margins of history books, are where the course of the world quietly turns. If you want to hear more of these untold stories, the battles without parades, the heroes without statues, please subscribe. There's always another forgotten chapter waiting to be told. Until then, take care. And remember, even the smallest stand can change everything.